Hola y bienvenidos a la clase de español con señorita Viola. Um, I am Miss Viola. I teach Spanish 1A, 1B, and 3 in a section of 3 honors at Derryfield. I'm just going to tell you guys a little bit about what my classes look like and give you some information about how you can support your students at home. Um, First, I thought I'd start with a little preview of how we start class every day. So usually I invite students to sit in a mindful posture with their spine straight and feet on the floor, and I'll invite them to close their eyes if they feel comfortable. Sometimes I'll play some calming music. Sometimes we'll just kind of sit in silence. I'll ask them to tune into their breath just to kind of get them focused and ready. So I invite you to pause and try that out yourself if you'd like. Después yo digo cada día, ¿cuál es la fecha de hoy? ¿Cuál es la fecha de hoy, estudiantes? ¿Cuál es la fecha de hoy? Entonces, ¿cuál es el día de la semana? Muy bien, hoy es miércoles. Perfecto, es miércoles. ¿Cuál es el número del día? Excelente, es el 30. Es miércoles el 30 de septiembre. Repitan, hoy es miércoles. El 30 de septiembre. Muy bien hecho. Después, cada día pregunto a los estudiantes, ¿qué tiempo hace hoy? ¿Qué tiempo hace hoy? ¿Hace buen tiempo o mal tiempo? Muy bien, hace muy buen tiempo. Hace sol y hace fresco. No hace calor ni frío. Hace fresco. ¿Cómo están hoy, estudiantes? ¿Cómo están? ¿Están cansados? ¿Están cansados? ¿O felices? ¿Cansados? ¿Enojados? ¿Cómo están? Okay, and then in the lower classes in 1A and 1B, we sing the alphabet every day. But I will spare you. These are just some things kids need for class every day. They're some version of their book, whether it's electronic or a hard copy. Definitely need a notebook and a pencil. It's really helpful to have earbuds available. These are the essential questions of our courses. So if your student is in 1A, you can look at the green. If they're in 1B, you can look at the red. And if they're in 3 or honors 3, you can go ahead and just read the yellow. Awesome. Here are some enduring understandings, things I hope that kids really can take away from each of my courses. So again, 1A can read the green. If your student's in 1B, the red. 3 or honors 3, the yellow. Great. So all of these enduring understandings and essential questions are really based on the American Council of Teaching of Foreign Languages 5 C's of language teaching, language education, world language education, which are communication, cultures, connections, comparisons, and communities. And I really try to pull all of these pieces into my classroom, whether it be through, a promotional video for viaja a Costa Rica, travel to Costa Rica, or whether it is learning about a recorrido or bull run that happens in a certain town in Spain every year, or simulating a scene of bartering in a fruit market. I really try to incorporate all different kinds of cultural and community aspects, since Spanish is so widely represented culturally in the world. This is my main rule of class, and I really just encourage the kids to be kind to one another and to be kind to themselves. It's hard to learn a language, and we all have to take it easy on each other and be patient as we learn. These are some of the methods I use within my classroom. Cognates are words that are similar in the learner's first language and second. So for most students at Derryfield, their first language is English. So a word like television and televisión would be cognates. So I really try to encourage them to use those, especially when they're reading content that may be a bit above their level. I really try to get students to pull on their own prior knowledge of grammar and structure too, because it's always helpful. These are about the percentages I speak in the target language in each class, kind of broken down. So if you want to look at those quickly, it varies throughout the year and it really can be dependent on the class and the specific needs that day. But for the most part, I'd say I adhere to them pretty strictly. Um, I really try to contextualize information within the classroom to make it relevant and important. So instead of just learning, okay, we're going to talk about school supplies, I try to make it, okay, what's in your backpack? What's in your pencil case? What's your school day like? Just relatable, and let's pull out a pencil and things like that. So I also try to really keep a comfortable class atmosphere where kids can make mistakes, because mistakes are just so essential to learning, especially in a language, and just learn from them and feel comfortable, most importantly, seeking out extra help as they need it. Um, and of course, I try to appeal to their interests. I really try to get to know my students, pull in music, sports, social media projects, well-known figures from the Spanish-speaking world, and of course, cultural products. Of course, I don't have a lot of things in my classroom that I can like show the kids this year, but of course, in the future, I hope to get those all back set up, and I still plan on introducing a lot of cultural products in other non-touching ways. Just some activities I have for each class. Want to take a look at those? You can pause the video. And then how ways that you can help your students at home. This would be a great thing to screenshot if you'd like. You can flashcards are a great study tool, whether they do them on Quizlet or by hand. The process of making flashcards is really powerful. So I try to encourage students not to borrow Quizlets that are already made, but to make them themselves. Conjugation diagrams, especially in Spanish 3, the kids will know exactly what I'm talking about. But we write out verbs a certain way when we learn them in the verb forms and the endings. And with a lot of verbs, it's nice to have some way to organize all those tenses. Excuse me. This year, it's going to be really important to read digital comments and feedback, because we can only give so much in-person feedback while we're kind of teaching to a whole class the way we are. So that's really helpful, especially if they're struggling with a certain concept. Go back and look at that exam and look at the feedback that was given you on that paper and things like that. And of course, speak aloud, speak to themselves when they study, record themselves and listen to it. Speak to you guys, whoever's at home. Speak to speak in class. No perfect Spanish exists, and I really try to stress that. There are so many nations that speak this language, and even within Spain, there are so many different dialects and variations and regional languages. So really, anything they say is good in my eyes, and if it's in Spanish. And it can help with spelling. And then, of course, I hope that if problems persisted, you'd encourage them to seek out extra help. Those are the kind of times I'm available during the day. And of course, I have a prep, so by appointment is great too. Muchísimas gracias. If there are any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me, bbiolo@derryfield.org. Thank you. Adios.
Para bala la bamba. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, I was jamming out. I didn't see that you pressed the button. Hello, welcome, bienvenidos. My name is Mark Blaisdell. I've been at Derryfield since way back in 2002, and I became the head of the school since 2003. I am referred, hopefully affectionately known as the El Jefe among the middle school community. I'm not sure whether that refers to my position at the school or perhaps the infamous character in the movie comedy classic The Three Amigos. To be honest with you, I don't care either way because I love being the chief in the middle school, and I actually love that movie. So my wife Tracy and I spent the first 10 years of our career working at a small all-girls boarding school in New Jersey. But when we started our family there, we soon felt the pull of our family and our native state and returned to New Hampshire, never thinking we would find a kind of day school at which we would form the kind of relationships between faculty and students that we so enjoyed in a residential environment. Honestly, we thought we'd probably have to sacrifice these kinds of deep relationships for the ability to go home each evening. Until, of course, we visited Derryfield and knew right away that it was a great match for us professionally, personally, and philosophically. It continues to be building these relationships that keeps me charged up about working here after 19 years. So I am also the proud parent of two DS graduates, Sarah 2012 and Parker 2016, and a new grandfather to young Mark, Derryfield class of 2038. Well, I guess we'll see. I enjoy playing music and tennis and exploring the outdoors with Tracy and our dog Sadie. I've worn many hats in my 19 years here at DS. I've coached tennis in the upper school, basketball in the middle school, and I'm currently the middle school baseball coach. I've always taught through my tenure, and I've had the fairly unique opportunity to teach within three different departments at DS: history, math, and most recently Spanish. With this diverse background, you may be wondering, sure, it's good to have a diverse teaching background, Hefe, but are you actually qualified to teach Spanish? Well, let me assure you that not only did my wife and I honeymoon in Cancun 30 years ago, but I have also seen Carlos Santana 4 times in concert. All right, there's a little more than that. Just kidding. Actually, we both of those things are true. But I also studied Spanish through high school and as an undergrad in college. Did a lot of Spanish tutoring. Taught courses at my previous high school and even a course here at in the upper school at Derryfield. And this is my third year teaching Spanish in the middle school. And I have just loved bringing a new language and culture to my students. In terms of departmental goals, we strictly follow the 5 C's promoted by the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages. They are communication, cultures, connections, comparisons, communities. You can read all about those on the MSA website for my class. I certainly invite you to go there. You can see broad goals like that, my syllabus, and even all the daily lesson plans. Suffice it to say that the Derryfield in the Derryfield World Language Program, we really encourage our students to use and experience the skills that they are learning in their new language and their new culture. And this is what makes it fun because you can leverage middle school's natural inclinations to be social as you encourage interaction and introduce them to cultural aspects like art, food, and of course, la música. Um, I also believe that world language affords a great opportunity to build and hone both generalized and course specific study skills. For example, we began this year really concentrating on memorizational techniques, including using multi-sensory methodology, which is an active way to study using all the senses. We've talked about grouping and organization, chunking material into manageable pieces, and organizing around common characteristics and themes. We've talked about purposeful practice. That's what the steno that hopefully you've seen your students be using is a great tool to do that, as is spiraling, which just means constantly coming back so that you don't let what you've memorized decay out of your short-term memory and get it into your long-term memory. But learning a foreign language also is a great practice for auditory processing skills, for attention to detail, especially in writing, to self-assess. We'll do that mainly through journals, and of course, risk-taking. We've talked about risk-taking quite a bit already, not being afraid to fail as long as you are failing forward. Finally, I want to talk to you about how you could support the program from home as parents First of all, encourage your child to speak in the target language. Make sure that they are using tools that we've provided and are working on, like flashcards, stenos, and other active studying techniques. Remember, they can always practice. If you ever hear, "I've got nothing to do," think about spiraling. Always, you can always go back and work on their vocab. If we're doing tests and projects, make sure that they're using their study guides and review their written work. They'll always be provided. Encourage them to take advantage of my extra help sessions, which are daily. Um, if you are not fluent, and I'm sure many of you aren't, you do not need to be. It's also a great technique to have your child teach you things about the language. And then I guess it's also really important just to simply expose your child to the target language. Um, they may not be able to do an immersion program. I was able to do that at my past school. Took a couple trips to Spain for 4 weeks to get immersed into the culture, which is the fastest way to learn. But not saying expecting any of you to book trips to Spain yet, though maybe in the upper school you look to do one of our global trips. But expose them to the target culture, including art, food, and once again, la música. Check out my website. Email me if you have any questions. mblazel@derryfield.org. Thanks for clicking on the button, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Buenos dias! My name is Melanie Hawthorne, and I am a member of the Spanish faculty at Derryfield. This is my third year at Derryfield, but my sixth year of teaching overall. Before DS, I taught at Kennett High School in North Conway, New Hampshire. And while it was beautiful up there, I was drawn to DS for its full student approach to learning and true sense of community and connection. Outside of school, I work at a summer camp on Newfound Lake, and I really enjoy reading. As a Spanish department, one of our main goals is to get students to use the language in authentic ways. This means that students are exposed to an immersive environment through at least 90% target language usage in the classroom. We always encourage our students to speak Spanish and use their language in order to communicate. This year, I have the pleasure of teaching Upper School Spanish 1 and Spanish 2. I love the beginning levels because we have fun with the language and students get to talk about themselves, which we all know is the most important thing to a high schooler. As I mentioned before, my main focus is to get students to speak the language. I've heard countless times in my life, I took 4 years of Spanish and I don't remember anything. I want to avoid that, and I want to help our students become lifelong learners and lovers of the language. In Spanish 1 this year, we'll start to learn the basic structures of language while focusing on conversational topics such as pastimes and travel. So far, we've begun this school year with learning how to introduce ourselves and give basic biographical information about ourselves, as well as express the date and the time. In the Level 2 class, we will dive further into our study of the language by exploring several different verb tenses, the most important being the past tense. My favorite project in Spanish 2 is writing a fairy tale. We've started off this year with a short review, followed by an introduction of reflexive verbs, giving students the opportunity to express what they do on a typical day. My hope for students this year is that they start to step out of their comfort zone. I hope that students take risks with their communication in Spanish and dare to say something incorrectly. With some trial and definitely some error, students will become more precise and confident speakers over time. My favorite classes are the classes where everyone's voice, idea, and opinion gets to be heard. Please help support your student by encouraging them to take the risk and jump into our immersive experience. Muchísimas gracias y adiós!
Salvete parentes. My name is Mr. Leary, and I'm your child's Latin teacher for this year. A little bit about me before we get started. I'm originally from the DC area, and this is my 6th year teaching Latin in the upper school. I'm the co-chair of the language department. I'm a 9th grade advisor, and I'm the boys varsity tennis coach. My story getting to DS is a pretty interesting one. My wife graduated from Derryfield in 2005, and while we were living in Southern Virginia, the job opened up for her old Latin teacher, and here I am. The ironic part is she was actually voted most likely to come back and work at the Derryfield school, so it's kind of funny. I really view Derryfield as a special place where kids can really get the support they need and to thrive in kind of our whole school philosophy. On the weekends, you may find me mostly hanging out with my family, trying to catch up on some sleep because I have an almost 2-year-old and then a 6-week-old at this point. And so mostly my wife and I try and catch up on sleep, but you'll find us outside hiking, fishing, and I try to play as much tennis as I possibly can. So back to the Latin. So I teach pretty much all the levels of Latin. I teach Latin 1, I teach Honors Latin 3, and I teach 2 advanced topics classes. And how I came to this point is I started studying Latin and ancient languages in high school. And I studied in the old method with Catholic priests where it was memorize, memorize, memorize. And we were never asked the question, why, right? Why do things work in this way? So my philosophy when it comes to Latin is I'm trying to build fluency in Latin, thinking about this truly as a language, teaching kids to think like a Roman, having a full grasp of the culture behind the language, which informs a full understanding of the language. Latin is a building block for so many Western languages. So if we can learn those building blocks and learn those concepts of how Latin works, it can let students either have that full understanding of Latin, or they can translate it into understanding French, understanding Italian, understanding German, because all these languages work in the same way. So my approach is kind of one of exploration. The students engage with the language first, and then they're taught the concepts and the structure to kind of really, really have a full grasp of the language, all the while asking the question, why, right? Why do things work this way? What is the building block of this word? Right? And trying to build up the skills they need to really do well in Latin. So in Latin 1, they're learning those common building blocks. We go over words, we go over sentence structure, we go over how verbs work, how nouns work, how to make an adjective from a noun. So they understand processes they do in their own mind in a different language and how these things really work. As the students advance through Honors Latin 3, and into our advanced topics, we start to really engage with a variety of Roman literature, from Caesar and his commentaries on war to Catullus, stories of war to poems of love. They research, form their own opinions, and connect with scholars outside the school. Student choice, we get into our advanced topics classes, student choice is like a really huge part of what I do. Their interest drives kind of the content of the class. And so I turn from someone who's a real teacher to someone who guides their understanding and helps them research and do this. Now, you may think, what can I do as a parent in order to help my child succeed in this course? If you don't know Latin, that's the norm. If you know Latin, you may be able to help your kids. But what you can really do, your biggest role is to help them communicate with me, right? If they seem like they're struggling, it's easy, communicate. Early intervention in Latin is a key because everything builds upon itself. So as they go through, if you see them struggling, reach out so that I can get in these things early and really help them. So I thank you all for your time, and I look forward to a great year with your students. Thanks. Wale.
Hola, me llamo Judy Reynolds. My name is Judy Reynolds. I'm a Spanish teacher here. I'm the co-chair of the World Language Department, and most recently I'm a proud Derryfield parent of a 6th grader. So I began my Derryfield career, I guess technically in 2005. I came to visit Derryfield. I had a friend that said, you have to visit the school. When I moved back, I moved into New England, back into New England, to New Hampshire from Pennsylvania. I knew it was the right place right away. It wasn't the right time for my family. So back in 2007, I was able to join this wonderful community. Back even on my visit in 2005, what struck me the most was the sense of community. I mean, we talk a lot about academic rigor and variety of programming, which is absolutely what Derryfield offers. But I kept going back to that sense of community. So both for my visit in 2005 and when I joined in 2007, it's just a place that feels like home. In 2009, as my family grew, I stepped away from Derryfield for a few years. Fortunately, I was able to reconnect in 2012 and happily returned to this place that I feel is like my second home. When I'm not at Derryfield, I live up in the Lakes region with my family. You can find me walking around the lake, eating chocolate, sometimes walking and eating chocolate. I love dance so much that I went back to the dance studio 7 years ago. I'm not sure my daughters approved that one, but in normal times there's lots of dancing and music in my classroom. I keep reminding the students that while we can't sing this year, we can definitely, Latin, salsa, merengue next to our desks with masks on, of course. So I keep going back to this sense of community. I have a bit of a commute from the Lakes region, and I think that it boils down to when you love where you work and you love where you live, the commute is just part of the deal and you make it work. In terms of my teaching here, Spanish is something that is very near and dear to my heart, so much so that I only speak it to my daughters at home. I'm still waiting for that thank you note. But at the end of the day, what we do here at Derryfield, in addition to encouraging our students to speak in the target language and listen and live in the target language as much as possible, we really do ask the students to find that reason, that personal reason why they want to study Spanish. So if they like cooking, I encourage them to watch cooking shows in Spanish. If they like to use social media, I encourage them to follow people that post about their interests in Spanish. It's just super important because, you can travel. The technology these days allows us to travel outside of our world and connect in a way that, quite frankly, us parents, we parents did not have this opportunity in the same way that our students do. I certainly include authentic literature and film in all of my classes, but really it's just sort of the catch. I want the students to find a reason beyond the textbook and the class to connect their language. So if they like math, I encourage them just, look at some math problems, science problems, or whatever in Spanish. I ask the kids to turn their phones in Spanish if possible, unless of course they're just getting their license and they need to use maps and actually get to their destination. So in my teaching, I stress the importance of understanding that you don't have to speak perfectly in the target language to pass your message well. I think all too often learners of another language feel that until they can speak perfectly, they should stay silent. I really stress to my students that their voice is important. I very much value their voices, and on that note, I want to hear their voices and not Siri's or Google's or other translators, of course, but I do feel that eventually I'm successful convincing the students that they can speak and make great observations, even if there are some grammar errors here and there. We certainly talk about those structures. It's important to learn formal structure in a language, but that is just a small part of the deal. I talk about the movie Frozen probably because of my daughter's ages, but they have to let it go like the song goes. They have to let go their fear of making a mistake. Everybody makes a mistake, even in their own native language. It's just part of the deal. And so as they find their voice in Spanish and we look to improve it, I really stress the importance of just not being afraid to go for it. And it is so beautiful when they do. And it does happen pretty quickly, even though the first few days maybe they're a little bit overwhelmed with the Spanish. I want them to feel as if they're in su casa. In normal times I would offer a lot of chocolate, but I can't do that this year. But all jokes aside, I do really try to create a friendly, welcoming environment. And I hope that I trick them into having some fun. At the end of the day, if I tell a bad joke in Spanish, if they're laughing at me or with me, it's still laughing. So, I've done my job. So this year I teach Honor Spanish 3, Spanish 4, Spanish 5, and Advanced Topics Spanish, which this year focuses on the pursuit of equality, especially for marginalized communities in the Spanish-speaking world. In Honors Spanish 3, we began our unit with en el consultorio, sort of health and wellness terms. The students, they're living in Spanish in this class. There's almost no English. They introduce themselves with a Flipgrid video exclusively in Spanish, and they're currently working on digital stories to practice the past tense verbs. I always say there's no better story to tell than your own, and that creates a personal context to which the students can make a stronger connection in terms of which of the two past tense verbs to pick, because it is a tricky concept. In Spanish 4, we began a unit with las relaciones personales, personal relationships in terms as such. Students, again, continuing to work on their mastery on grammar terms previously learned. Both Spanish 3 Honors and 4 is where you get to, a lot of the structures for grammar have been presented. Now we focus a lot about the exceptions. It's not always about what's correct or incorrect. It's really about how you want to pass your message, which is hard because students sometimes just want to hear, well, just tell me the answer, señora, and I'll write it down. And I said, no. ¿Cuál es tu mensaje? What is your message? What message are you trying to pass to your audience or listener? And that's a hard one. So students in Spanish 4 currently they wrote an email recently applying for a job of their choosing. So in all classes, students are allowed to use dictionaries, of course. I invite them to use dictionaries, but not to rely on them too heavily, especially with some sophisticated software. More than ever, the students have to be careful to make sure their voice is heard and not that of a translator, and then we can work with improving their language. In Spanish 5, which is a literature course, primarily short stories, 20th century short stories of the magic realism genre. Again, we still work with grammar structures, advanced grammar structures, but a lot of it is more seminar-style literature discussions, beginning with a short story, Dos Palabras by Isabel Allende. In that story, the character is self-taught. She writes as a scribe. She wrote a presidential speech for a candidate in this small town in Latin America. I have turned that into a small writing, assignment for the students, writing their own presidential speeches as if they were going for class president, or school president, I'm sorry. The timing of it, of course, with the presidential elections is important, I suppose. But that, this is a story I begin each year with because it is a fairly modern, fairly easier to read story. Some of the students even read the story in English their sophomore year, which was a purposeful sort of connection in our curriculum. And again, fully in Spanish. Now we're working on the students speaking to each other fully in Spanish. And lastly, my advanced topics course, the pursuit of social justice and equality in the Spanish-speaking world. We're exploring marginalized figures. We began again with a modern short story just so the students can get a sense of the pace of the course. It is a film class as well, so there'll be a lot of film sort of video clips, some in their entirety. Most recently, we worked with the Baroque poetry of Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, who was a 17th century nun, a woman who became a nun precisely because she valued education so much, and that was the only way she was going to study. And we had begun with a short story by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. He's the author of 100 Years of Solitude, if anybody follows that line of literature. We began with a short story, again, a modern text so the students could get introduced. But recently the students did a sort of Snapchat-like project where they had to, create a few snaps from the perspective of Sor Juana fighting for justice and equality. It happens to be Banned Books Week this week. A lot of her own personal library was taken away because back when the Inquisition happened and books were prohibited if they weren't on the list, mandated by the King and Queen and the Catholic Church, then they, had their books taken away. And as a woman in 17th century Mexico, really had to fight for her right to study. So very interesting. The kids have done amazing work. Gosh, I wish you could be in here with them, hearing them sort of run their lives in Spanish. It's pretty impressive. So, lastly, I just thank you for taking the time to meet me today, albeit on a video screen. And, as far as what you can do at home to support your students, just encourage them to find a connection outside of Derryfield, to really expand upon their vocab, not on any particular school list or class list, but just really start to begin to live. You know, I want to serve as a springboard for their future Spanish careers, whether that is as a biologist, whether they travel, they just want to pick up a hobby and find a friend that speaks Spanish. I mean, all of the above. So, you know, I'm lucky to do what I love every day, and I'm so lucky to share that with your students. So thank you. Gracias por su tiempo. I look forward to seeing you in person someday soon. Thank you.
Hi there, Derryfield. My name is Jillian Roberts. I am a Latin teacher in the middle school, as evidenced by this really excellent cartoon I'm holding up here, wishing kids a happy birthday in Latin. I have been a teacher at Derryfield now for 17 plus years. This is my 18th year right now. And I'm also the Director of Security and Crisis Management, as well as the Assistant Dean of Students. So I wear a lot of hats here at Derryfield, but my favorite hat is absolutely the Latin teacher hat, because I get to make an ancient dead language come alive again, working with some fantastic kids with huge imaginations and fantastic exploring, you know, curiosities and just a desire to learn an ancient language. So I do teach 6th, 7th, and 8th grade Latin currently, and have been in the middle school and the upper school as a Latin teacher in the past. But yeah, I really enjoy working with the middle schoolers the most, because I am a really creative and pumped up person. My sense of humor is really right on level with middle schoolers. So working in the middle school gives me a chance to use my humor and my creativity and my artistic side to really get kids excited about a language that might otherwise seem boring, you know? And I really strongly believe that if you can take a subject like Latin and make it fun and exciting and explore the culture and the people who spoke that language, and kind of all of the art and the literature from those ancient time periods, and different countries. I think that is just, it's the best job in the world, and it's really super awesome for me to be able to bring that to children, and have them get excited about learning about it. We do learn actual grammar, believe it or not. We learn grammar, we learn vocabulary, tons of vocabulary, but because we're having so much fun doing it, the kids don't necessarily realize that they've learned all of this grammar and vocabulary until the end of the term or the end of the year. They all of a sudden, they know Latin, they know real Latin. They can read it, they can write it. It's not really a spoken language, but they can use that vocabulary in their everyday dealings. And it's super helpful, obviously, for, you know, kind of taking the SATs or, you know, in your writing in general. I always argue that Latin is kind of the best class to take in order to become a better writer, more skilled speaker. Maybe not evidenced very well in this video, but yeah, I mean, we do all sorts of fun projects where the kids get to design their own Roman villas, their ideal kind of modern day Roman villas. We write epic poetry in the style of Odysseus, the Odyssey and the Iliad, rather, in the style of Homer's epic writing. And we do research projects. We put on a Roman forum where people can play ancient Roman games. They can take place in, they take part rather in very safe Roman gladiator battles. They can kind of help organize army tactics and things like that. The people can get their hair done in ancient styles. So all sorts of fun things that we do throughout the year to kind of bring that ancient culture to life. I do a lot of drawings because I have a background as an artist, a cartoonist, and a tattoo artist, actually. So we learn Latin through drawings. Latin's all based on endings, and it's really great when kids kind of can tell who's doing the action in the sentence based on what ending they're wearing. In this case, the hamster is the subject, the banker is the direct object, and he's being attacked by the hamster with a water gun. And then below we have the dog dining on the servant in the road. And so Latin's all wacky, it's all out of order. It's very Yoda-like in its kind of speaking, in the reading of sentences. And so I like to kind of quiz the kids and see if they can draw what the sentence says based on the endings that they're seeing. So the way that you can help me out at home is to drill their vocabulary with them, their Latin vocabulary, but also really to continue to encourage the exploration of this ancient culture and the unpuzzling or the puzzling of this crazy language. I really appreciate it when kids kind of thirst for that knowledge, and I can help guide them along the way. So I welcome all the time any questions you may have. I'm happy to help you help them at home. And I really look forward to meeting many of you in person eventually. And I absolutely love working with your kids. I have enjoyed working at Derryfield. Derryfield is really my family. There's no better way to put it. It's such a great community, and that's what brought me back. I'm actually an alum of the class of 1999, so I came right back after college. You can't keep me away. So I'm happy to be back, happy to have been back for almost 18 years now, and I really look forward to a fantastic year with all of my wonderful little Latin students, my little Roman army. Thank you. Bye.
Hi, I'm Daniel Schwartzberg. I'm a teaching fellow here at Derryfield this year, working in the Latin department. I'll be teaching Latin 2 to the upper school in 2 sections, and then I'll be working with Jill Roberts in the middle school for some of her Latin 1 sections. A little bit about my background. I am a graduate of the University of Michigan, where I majored in musical theater and also got my minor in Latin. And so it was a great way for me to be able to stay involved in the language, but also be doing my other passion at the same time. But of course, the graduation that I am most proud of, or at least that is most pertinent in this situation, is from Derryfield itself. I'm an alum from class of 2013. So it really is wonderful to be back and part of the community and get to be in this place that had meant so much to me and that is still meaning so much to so many people and so many families. So a little bit about what we'll be doing this year in my sections of Latin 2. As the whole Latin department is doing this year, we have a bit of a turnover with the kind of curriculum that we're using. We've now switched to the Cambridge Latin course, as opposed to the Oxford Latin course, which I actually learned from when I was originally a student too many years ago. So what's very cool is that Cambridge works with Latin in a very integrated way, where the students will be able to translate and be learning about grammar topics at the same time. Latin 2 is what I really think of as this last big push for the major grammar topics of Latin and those really kind of nitty-gritty grammar details that are very important to the language and very essential to translation. But kind of prior to going to more classical texts like Caesar or maybe some of those more heavy-duty Latin things that people might think of when they think of the language. So we're going to be having a very heavy grammar focus this year. From a personal teaching philosophy, where I really come from when I teach Latin, is having had some experience for the past several years working privately with students and teaching others. I love to come from a grammar-first perspective anyway, not only from a Latin grammar perspective, but from an English grammar perspective, because the kind of the meeting there of those two worlds of English and Latin grammar are so essential to really understanding the language and getting to have your feet under you before you dive into those more complex texts like Caesar or Virgil or Catullus if we're doing poetry, like I'm sure Mike Leary may talk about in his video. So, when it comes to learning this grammar from the Cambridge Latin course, I'll be working with the students very frequently on not only understanding the Latin itself, but returning to English grammar concepts so that they can refer and relate the material they're learning back to English phrases and English terms that they may already know or that they may not have learned about, but that way they can integrate their understanding of Latin with the understanding of English that's also going to be essential in things like writing their essays or putting together an effective speech in rhetoric. So that mingling there, that meeting of Latin and English grammar is really where I come from a foundational base. And then, of course, what's nice about Cambridge is that they have topics of Roman culture and ancient Roman history. So throughout the year, we'll be talking through things like, well, an upcoming course will be about kind of myths and the background of mysticism in ancient Rome and how things like spiritual beliefs played into their cultural practices. So we'll have a chance to dive into cultural topics as well as the language itself. So that's a bit about what we'll be doing this year. We'll hopefully have the chance to do some fun upcoming projects as well. One of the things that's coming up for the students that I'm looking forward to is they've each chosen in both of the sections a topic of grammar that they are going to focus on, research, look up the rules about, look up how to understand it and how to write examples, and then they're going to be giving a presentation and teaching the topic to their fellow classmates. Because as we just talked about in class today, what I've always found to be one of the best ways to fully understand a topic is to be able to teach it yourself. So those kind of integrated projects are something that I'm really excited about bringing into the classroom, and especially given all the exciting new technical wizardry we are bringing to the front this year because of obvious reasons. But it's introducing some interesting opportunities for the students to present in new ways and find new inventive forms of showing their work and of demonstrating that work to their classmates. So all that being said, really at the end of the day, what I am very excited about for these classes is to encourage the students to participate, to feel comfortable airing an answer when they feel like they may not know the right answer, or when maybe they feel sure they have the wrong answer, or when they feel sure they have the right answer. Either way, having that confidence in the class to say what they think the answer is, or at least give some ideas, because feeling confident in their answers, whether that's in Latin or in any of their other subjects, having that confidence is something that will serve them so well throughout their academic career, and so I hope to really foster that in the Latin 2 classroom this year with my students. I'm really looking forward to the rest of the year. Like I said, it is very exciting and very meaningful to me to be back on the Derryfield campus and to be here in a different capacity than before, but still feeling that same sense of community as I was lucky enough to experience during my time as a student. It's wonderful to meet all of you virtually, and I look forward to connecting with you all throughout the year.
Hola! I am Raina Stimson. I am a Spanish teacher here at Derryfield. I've been here since 2006. Love working here, love teaching Spanish here and working in the language department. And I love being a dean of students. It's a great aspect of being a faculty member and a dean of students at the same time, and being involved in head class advising. What I love about Derryfield is how each person sees different perspectives in their role, and I have different roles, and that's actually really helpful. Love teaching Spanish here. My approach is very collaborative, cooperative. I think it's important that when you're learning a language that you feel comfortable in the classroom, that you also have fun. I think with the more fun you have, the more open you are. Your brain is receptive. I think you need to repeat a lot when you're learning a language and internalize rules by practice, fun, dialogues, make it a real world situation. When am I going to use this language? I think when we were growing up, I'm speaking from the parents' perspective, like our age group, we just did a lot of writing, not a lot of fun, it was more rote, and it was more grammar, which I think you do need grammar, of course, especially in the advanced levels. But at first, I think as a Spanish 1 teacher, you have to make it fun and you have to make it relatable. You have to keep it light enough that students are engaged and want to participate. That's a really, I think that our style here in the language department is to be super engaging with the students and push them to speak in Spanish. I think that that is really important so they won't have fear of speaking in another language. And so, as a parent, as a former parent, a Derryfield parent, I would say encouraging your kids to be advocates for themselves. I think in my classroom, that's very important. I really listen to kids, and if they tell me that they're overloaded with work on a particular day, we delve into it. We talk about what does that mean and how do you approach your studies, and how do you study for an assessment? How do you chunk out your assignments? I think those discussions at home too are really important. Is how do you help your student manage their time at home, because you see them at home and we don't. So what I love about Derryfield is that we are very much partners with you as parents. We want to help your kids and we want to know whatever would help them to be more successful. Tell us. We like that collaboration with the parents. The partnership is so important here at our school. So I welcome everybody to this school year, and I just am so in awe, really, about how great, just speaking as a dean now, how great the students are about following the protocols. They've been just wanting to be here so badly on campus for the most part. And if they're at home, I'm hoping that their experience is solid. And I am somebody that will really help if that is not true. If there anything we can do to make it better, please let me know. So again, my name is Raina Stimson, and I'm just so excited to be working with this really bright group of students that I have this year.
Salwete. My name is Caroline Thurkill, and I'm a new teacher here at Derryfield. I wanted to take the opportunity to introduce myself to you, give you an idea of who I am, and what my expectations are for the Latin department this year. First of all, I'm a Derryfield lifer. I started at the school in 6th grade and graduated in 2010. Returning now as a teacher, I have an even greater appreciation for the culture of belonging, community, and emotional support that makes Derryfield so special. I attended college at Columbia University, where I graduated with honors in both archaeology and English literature, with a minor in classical history. I then went to grad school at Texas A&M, where I studied nautical archaeology. In pre-COVID times, I worked around the world exploring shipwrecks and sunken cities. I've excavated ancient religious sites in the mountains of Peru, dug through an Etruscan necropolis in Tuscany, and surveyed the remains of an ancient Roman naval port destroyed by volcano eruption in Naples, Italy. These are only a few of the adventures I've been on over the years, and the Latin department has asked that I partner with them to bring that first-hand experience working with ancient materials to the Latin curriculum in all my classes. The ones that I'm teaching are Latin 3, 4, and 5 in the upper school. I'm also serving as one of Ms. Roberts' TAs in the 7th grade Latin and standing in for her when she cannot attend her middle school advisory periods. I consider it my privilege to try and provide an entertaining and simultaneously informative experience for all the levels that I teach. The main aims for the Latin department at Derryfield are to build an engaged community and to boost competency and fluidity in a very difficult subject. But more importantly than that, our aim is to have fun. We're learning a dead language here. There has to be an engaging appeal to it. We have to all work together to find a happy medium that helps the students learn effectively without being overwhelming. In class, we will be exploring new methods of learning beyond the standard translation grind. My aim is to provide the inspiration and support for each student to meet their own individual goals when learning the Latin language. While we will be focusing on getting through our assigned books, it is important to recognize that there are many other skills that a strong student requires. For example, my high schoolers will be researching and presenting 3 to 5 minute verbal reports delivered to each other on a variety of topics throughout the year, This is meant to be very low pressure and a way to help students open up to their peers and get comfortable with public speaking. I'm also placing a focus on building vocabulary skills, not through quizzes and repetition, but by figuring out the right words to describe how students are feeling about class and homework on a daily basis. Making vocabulary an exercise in self-expression rather than memorization leads to much better retention and comprehension over the long term. Overall, I believe in teaching students more than just how to translate Latin, but also how to effectively stand up in front of their peers and deliver information with confidence and certainty. While all the Latin classes have consisted mostly of review so far, we are starting to slowly incorporate new topics. For example, the upper schoolers have been learning some more fluid uses of the subjunctive mood in order to open up more options for articulacy and expression. For my 7th graders, I want to help deliver a fun introduction to the language and to Roman culture. For the Latin 3s, their exploration of the language has reached the point where they're beginning to read real poetry, which is always exciting. For the 4s and 5s, we get to read a seminal text of classical scholarship, Kaiser's De Bello Gallico. It gives them a first-person perspective into the realities of Roman life as both a leader and a soldier. They're learning just as much about Roman history as they are about Latin. I'm excited to make this course fun and supportive. We want to breathe life back into this dead language that serves as a doorway into rich English vocabulary, other cultures and the arts, historical periods, even modern Romance languages. Please feel free to email me at cthurkill@derryfield.org if you have any questions about me, or the way this year is planned, or what changes I'll be bringing to the Latin curriculum. Walete!
Hi, my name is Dawson Shine, and I'm actually a new teaching fellow hire at Derryfield School. I'm currently teaching a Spanish 1 section as well as a pre-calculus section in the math department, and also helping out with TA duties, assisting Mrs. Viola, who's also in the Spanish department, as well as an assistant coach for the rowing team at Derryfield, which is actually how I found out about the school itself. This recent year, I graduated from Ithaca College, and I was looking to get into education or coaching, and found out when I reached out to Mr. Hetler that they needed some help with the crew team. And after he saw my past history working with Spanish TA duties in Ithaca College out in New York, as well as tutoring pre-calculus and calculus for the last 6 to 7 years, it became a match made in heaven where I got to actually join Derryfield School, both in the classroom and on the water with the rowing team. And honestly, in the first month, I haven't been able to look back. It's been amazing. Obviously, I'm still new at the moment, so I don't have the greatest feel on exactly how Derryfield operates, but I know I already love the atmosphere, the student-focused teaching, the way the kids are allowed to learn, and the fact that there's just this close-knit relationship between all of the community of students, faculty, and parents. And each week, no matter how much time gets put into working and prepping and learning what everything's going on this year, it still feels like it's worth every second that I spend. But, of course, you might find me doing something else on the weekends, like rowing a single at the Amoskeag Boat Club, where we actually row out of for Derryfield School, or even just cooking weird meals in the kitchen. I absolutely love to try recipes that I've never seen before, and I go out that morning, buy all the ingredients I think I need, and just whip something up, hope for the best. And honestly, that's kind of how I view the classes for students, is just taking what you need on a given day and then figuring out how we can get from point A to point B, getting through that recipe, and coming up with a great meal by the end of class. I'm definitely teaching in two very different departments in terms of Spanish 1 and pre-calculus, but despite that, there's still a lot that gets put into both of these. They're very much like languages, and I like to approach them with the same basic philosophy, which is you can't be afraid to make mistakes, and you can't be afraid to ask questions. When you're first learning math or you're first learning Spanish, the biggest hurdle is just trusting that you have to step out over a ledge and take a risk, ask a question in a language you don't really know, try a sentence you've never heard before that you just read in a book. Anyone who's taken a second language knows that the process, it's difficult at first. So I try to create a judgment-free zone for the students where they can take risks, they can speak Spanish in class as much as possible, or they're willing to answer questions in math for homework or tests with confidence going into it, and trying to build that respectful understanding between myself and the students that they are allowed to try something even if they're not sure if it's right, because they know no matter what, they will learn through the process. Specifically for Spanish, I've been trying to build the foundation for a new language, especially with months removed from being on a campus, working with a school environment. I want them to be able to comfortably develop their ability without wearing too much on grading aspects or tests, really focusing on projects to get them comfortable holding conversations about general topics in life and school with another Spanish speaker. I also want to provide them the opportunity to hear different Spanish speakers, their accents, their cultures, their backgrounds from all across the world and the US. I mean, Spanish is a language, it opens the door to cultural exchange between peoples and nations for the students learning it. And I want to make sure they have the ability to participate and appreciate these cultural exchanges and differences. For pre-calculus, on the other hand, I'm doing roughly the same style, but for them, they've been learning math for years. And this year in particular, it's difficult because, of course, the students are coming back from months removed from a school environment. So my hope is that these students, by the end of the year, will have confidence again in their ability to learn and progress in mathematics, which can be daunting for some students. Obviously, with pre-calculus, you have to deal with trigonometry, the exploration of topics that are going to be related to calculus in the next year if they continue onward. You have to learn how to recognize patterns, trends, relationships, and it can be a lot for a student, especially when it's in the middle of this crazy year. So I try to make sure that when they get to class, it's comfortable, it's relaxed, and they realize that I'm not going to just leave them behind. Math is a cumulative process of learning, especially in pre-calculus. You're trying to build up from trigonometry and algebra, moving towards calculus. It's this branching bridge that they need to be walking carefully along, not stumbling, not falling, not getting stuck on the opposite side. Success comes from just consistent work ethic and not being afraid to ask for me to slow down or to move on. If we're getting the topics and we're going through quickly, we can pass through stuff that might have been prior knowledge and jump right into the harder material. And as they already know, I'm always available to schedule appointments outside of class time, to meet on Zoom, to work on the homework, because that's the only way they'll make it stronger in math. They need to really be confident in the ability to learn and to struggle. And it's been fantastic so far. And at home, I mean, some of the useful things that these students need nowadays for Spanish, for example, is just being encouraged to listen to media. Maybe they like podcasts. They could listen to just a news show in Spanish, getting themselves surrounded in the language and the culture, and kind of removing themselves from the clusters that we're currently in just because of society and what's going on. And it requires a lot of support, letting them teach you at home, having them practice and be proud of what they're learning in class. And for math as well, there's the same pitfall that usually happens where a student struggles with math and then they get written off as a poor math student forever by maybe parents or by faculty, whatever happens at certain schools. And I hope that this year we can break kids out of that pitfall and pull them back up, get them on track, and be encouraged to spend time at night working on homework, but also putting it away after a certain point in time and just asking for help and letting them do that, letting them branch out, fail, but then come back and succeed. Overall, I think it's going to be a fantastic year, and I can't wait to work with all the students for the next few months and really get learning back on track. Thank you.